Well, good afternoon. My name's Phil Squire. I'm the chair of today's webinar. I'm the Fair Energy Manager at Sustainability Trust. And today we have the second of our series, our home energy series, and it's Warm, Dry, Healthy Homes, Here to Help. And today we have a focus on practical things that you can do in your property over this cold winter. If you're in Wellington today, you'll understand that it's we've got a southerly that's coming straight off the ocean. It's got a hint of snow, and we're freezing here. And I personally don't have any heating in the house, so really wearing it today. So we're going to also be talking about what advice, subsidies and support is available for tenants and homeowners, students and landlords during COVID 2 and 3 and 1 and beyond. I thought maybe we could just first start off with a karakia, and I don't know if you know the whakataka ho. This is a nice way to open up any kind of meeting. So if you know it, then you can recite along with me. Otherwise, yeah, I'll just say it for the group here. So whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hi ake ana te atakura, e tio, e huka, e hauhu, tihei mauri ora. So yeah, just a couple of words about the webinar today. So if you've got any questions, please post them on the Q&A, which is at the bottom of your screen there, and they'll come up, and then we'll answer them as appropriate. We have a panel of 3 here today, including myself, all from Sustainability Trust. I'll ask these folks to introduce themselves just shortly, give a bit of a background, but just go around them initially to say their names. So we have Craig Audie from Sustainability Trust, is a home performance advisor. Chris Mashesky as well, a home performance advisor from Sustainability Trust, and also Amanda Ashby, who is our curtain bank manager. So this session is being recorded and will be available after this event on our website, and along with links to additional sources. So maybe we can just go around our panel first of all and just give a bit of background on who you are and how you can help today. So maybe start with Craig.
Hey guys, my name's Craig, and I've been at Sustainability Trust just shy of 10 years now. So split in half. 5 of those years was actually installing insulation in many rental and homeowner properties around Wellington, and then 5 years has been as a home performance advisor, which is predominantly looking at homeowners, but also I do rental assessments as well when there's some overflow work. So growing up, learning the Rental Tenancies Act, and now further the Healthy Home Guarantees Act as well. So should have a bit of advice and help for you guys, depending on what you need.
Great, thanks Craig. Chris.
Yeah, good afternoon. Chris here, Sustainability Trust. I've been with the organisation for 5 years, also as a practicing home performance advisor. As Craig said, our job really is to go out and have a look at homes, how we can improve them, how we can make them more energy efficient, environmentally sustainable, and warm, dry and comfortable. It's the main goal.
Thank you, Chris. Amanda.
I'm a newbie, so I've only been at the trust for about just under 3 months, and I run the curtain bank. So we get curtains donated to us, we refit them to people's specific measurements, and then send them out into the community for anyone who has a community services card. I'm also a secondhand shopper and recycler for my entire life, much to my kids' horror when they were little. But yeah, so it's just, I love the job so much because it's all the things I like doing.
Great. Thanks, Amanda. Yeah, and just a note, so Sustainability Trust on level 3, we're back in action. The curtain bank is open, and we're also starting to do assessments and installs and for heating and insulation. So some of our other services will be have slowed down a bit and waiting for level 2 and beyond. But hopefully they will get the all clear next week. No zero cases today, again for the 2nd time running. So yeah, just a reminder, if you've got any questions, then you can log them in the Q&A and they'll come up on my screen. I'll be able to ask and direct them to the panel. And then yeah, let's get started. So our first question up is a question from Sarah, who lives in a flat and it's very cold. And she says that the landlord says that he doesn't need to install a heat pump or change the insulation. So she's questioning whether that is correct. Maybe I direct that first question to Craig.
Cool. So currently what's in force in regards to requirements is what they call Rental Tenancies Act, which only requires a minimum level of insulation which meets a 1978 standard. So there are still standards out there that the insulation has to meet up to the current latest standard. Right now there is implemented a Healthy Home Guarantees Act, but it's not actually enforced till 90 days after any new or renewed tenancy from the 1st of July 2021. So from that date going forward, there are minimum requirements set for heating and insulation. So it is an improved insulation standard from the current Rental Tenancies Act. And there's obviously heating's been involved, moisture reduction as well. So extraction for kitchens and bathrooms, minimum ventilation requirements for size of windows, openable windows in bedrooms, drainage as well. So the new Healthy Home Guarantees Act is a lot more robust and in-depth and should provide a good quality home where it can be done. It's just that it hasn't actually technically been brought into force yet, so that work is still ongoing until it's a mandatory requirement to meet.
Yes, I guess that but your question around insulation is that the landlord has to have ceiling and underfloor insulated if at all possible now, and that was from June last year. So I guess if the landlord's saying they don't need to be insulated to the current Residential Tenancies Act code, then that's incorrect, and you need to have a conversation with them about that. The other options are, if they're not forthcoming on that, is to take an action to the Tenancy Tribunal. So I guess the other thing interesting about heating is that technically there really should be heating in a home. The law is a bit murky the old law is a bit murky around that, but does state that all properties need to be heated. So I guess the advice is one around the insulation is that definitely needs to be done. And the second one is about a conversation. The Healthy Home Standard, as Craig says, won't kick in for about another year or so. But you definitely better start having that conversation with the landlord. So second question we have is one about curtains, which will go to Amanda, of course. So the question is, I don't have curtains. What sort of curtains should I pick?
That's a great question, especially because it's really cold today. The best curtains that you can get, you need to have a double layer on it, because that's what's going to give it the thermal insulation. So people often think if you buy something that's thermal backed, that's going to keep it warm, but it's not. So try to get a curtain that's got a layer on the back. And also, if you can, try and get cotton, because those thermal backed curtains also don't wash. So if they get moldy, as soon as the new ones, if you wash them, they'll just disintegrate and the backing will come off, and which is quite smelly and messy, and it also, the light will shine through. So where you can get as much cotton in it as you can. And you can you can either come to the curtain bank if you've got community services card, but you can also look in op shops and on Trade Me as well with your curtain measurements. And we can put links in here. We've got a video on how to measure your windows for when you're looking to buy curtains. Oh, and the other thing is to look for a long drop right down to the ground. That's what's going to keep the heat in the best, because that sort of creates that thermal barrier. Have I explained that right, Phil, about the thermal barrier?
That's right. Lining. It's all about creating the air gap.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. And we're going to be doing a study with brands later on this year, looking at the best kinds of curtains, looking at heat loss, whether they're full lengths, double lined, floor sealed at the sides, to get some actual numbers on that. So so we can provide the best advice and backing for curtains. So another question: are there any subsidies for insulation or heating? And can I pay it off, or do I have to pay it all in full at the same time? Maybe Chris, you could answer that question. Subsidies, insulation, heating.
Of course. So there are a wide range available. Sustainability Trust is actually a service provider to the Warm Kiwi Homes initiative. Basically, that's government funding for an owner-occupied dwelling that may not have enough insulation or that would meet what we'd call reasonable insulation now. You can get massive subsidies depending on a couple of things, whether or not you hold a community services card or whether or not you live in an area that is marked as high deprivation. You can find that information out for yourself as to whether or not you qualify by having a look on the Warmer Kiwi Homes website. It's warmerkiwihomes.govt.nz. With heating, there is also subsidies available. They will allow you, or they will subsidise the installation of a clean heating source. So that might be a heat pump, it might be a fireplace, as long as it's clean burning. Once again, the qualification process is much the same. You need a community service card, or you need to be in an area that is marked as DEP zone 8, 9, or 10. That information is readily available. All you've got to do is punch in your address, and they'll be able to tell you. Or of course, you can get in touch with the service provider like Sustainability Trust, and we can help you with that.
And I guess there are also targeted rates in the Wellington region that can assist you to pay the capital cost off. So that's what are those? How does it run at the moment?
So with insulation, if you're in the Wellington region, or Greater Wellington region, you can have $3,900 of your insulation put towards your rates, and it's paid off at 7% for 9 years. It can be paid off quicker. And if you are in Wainuiomata, you can also put, well, it's up to $5,000 combined insulation and heating. So you can also add heating to your rates in Wainuiomata, but that's the only area, I believe. Or Wairarapa. I think Wairarapa also does it, but we're not a service provider to Wairarapa. But if anyone's from Wairarapa, I believe you can have heating in Wairarapa and Wainuiomata on your rates.
I guess the Sustainability Trust too, we offer a 12 months interest-free repayment, which is you can pay that off monthly at the trust. So so any questions you have, then please direct them to us either online here, or you can email us at the trust, and we can provide you with any answers. So another question about curtains for Amanda. So the question is, we don't have curtains, and the landlord says we can't get curtains even if we pay for them. Is this true? An interesting question.
I don't know from the tenancy point of view, but I don't know why he would stop you. I guess it would depend if the rails are up or not, because putting a rail into a sill or a wall, is the landlord's property. So I guess their objection must be with the rails, because you could surely put your own curtains in. I don't actually know the answer to that one legally, but I mean, we certainly provide lots of curtains for rental properties. Most landlords are more than happy for tenants to provide their own curtains. They just don't always want to pay the cost of the curtain themselves. So that's a weird one. I'm not sure the answer for that.
It might be an idea, I guess, to clarify that with the landlord exactly what their objection is. But yeah, there may not be. There's nothing specifically in the Residential Tenancies Act that actually it doesn't include curtains in the new Act. We certainly argued very strongly that it should. But maybe you could post that to us online, then we'll have a look into that, whether there are specific exemptions around, because I know that there's some new changes to the Act that allow tenants to put up pictures and things on the wall, which you thought would be a given, but there have been some recent changes, so we can look into that for you. So in a tenant, there's a question from a tenant who says, are there any subsidies that I can access to make my home warmer? Again, Chris, in terms of actual subsidies for tenants.
So there's no current subsidies available for tenants themselves. The subsidies are all directed towards owner-occupied dwellings. However, there are well homes initiatives that we operate with here as Sustainability Trust, which kind of hinges around advice for tenants. And there may be something there that you can tap into in respect to a resource and support. But in regards to government funding, there isn't for tenants currently.
It might be could even, his person who's asking this question might ask specifically, you could ask us specifically about what kind of subsidies that you might be looking for. As we noted before, the Residential Tenancies Act will require the landlord to either have insulated, so they're and or to add heating and a range of other measures later on. So yeah, there is obviously there's stuff that the tenants can do for themselves, but on the smaller measures, but the larger measures are going to be regulated and have been regulated for landlords. So we've got a question here about how we can ensure the safe installation of insulation at level 3. So that's a bit of a question about what our procedures are for installing insulation, I guess, and assessing at level 3. Craig, do you want to have a crack at answering that?
Yeah, see how we go. So currently we are installing insulation and doing certain types of assessments under level 3. So we're trying to minimize our contact in a property to one room where we can. So we're ideally halting our assessments that look over a broad spectrum in the whole property, and we're just trying to limit our contact to one individual room. So what we're doing is doing self-health checks before we go out for the day, so to make sure we're feeling fit and healthy and have no symptoms of COVID-19 or any other illness. We call the customer on the day to make sure they haven't been feeling sick in the last 14 days, they're not self-isolating, they haven't come into contact with anyone who has been self-isolating or anyone else who has been sick in that sort of 14-day period. We also have enhanced PPE gear, so we are now carrying around hand sanitizer to sanitize our hands before and after entering a property. We'll wipe down and clean any surface that we physically touch. We ask customers to ideally be in another room while we're doing assessments, or we at least maintain that 2-meter physical distance. When it comes to actually physically installing the insulation, our installers themselves are keeping a 1-meter distance apart in vehicles, because that's all that can really be done, sadly, in the trucks that have to carry the insulation. And they're keeping a 1-meter distance from each other on site, and they're also sort of sanitizing any surfaces that they touch, whether it be your manhole entrance or anything inside the property. Yeah, everything's pretty much been sanitized. We have gloves that we wear, masks that we wear if people feel like it, and we double check our own health and also the customer's health during and sort of before their assessment as well, just to sort of cross as many T's and dot as many I's as we can to sort of reduce any chance of any contamination at all.
Great. Thanks for that, Craig. Yeah, so we're certainly taking every recommendations from both ECA and the construction industry to remain safe in these times, and that's our highest priority. So an interesting question here from another tenant who says, so my landlord installed and paid for a heat pump downstairs, but we still don't have any heating upstairs. Are they legally required to do more? Maybe Chris, if you could have a crack at that.
Yeah, so under the forthcoming Healthy Homes Guarantees Act, what they're stating is that you must have an adequate fixed permanent heat source in the main living space. While ideally we would all have heating throughout the homes, there is no requirement for a landlord at this point in time to provide heating into bedrooms. If your primary living space is on the top level, then that is where your heat source should be installed. Obviously, I'm not privy to the house's design itself, but if it's bedrooms, etc., on the top level, that would generally fall on the tenant's shoulders to maintain their own heating in those spaces. Yeah,
I think and that's right. I think it's one of the weaknesses on the current Residential Tenancies Act, is it really just provides that for the main living area. We certainly advocated quite strongly that that it should be cover all areas of the house, as it does in the UK and Europe and other civilized countries. But at the moment, yeah, it's just the main living area, so that's all the landlord is legally required to do. But I guess there are other options. I guess basically plug-in heaters are the main option for us, but they're reasonably expensive to run. Maybe a quick word about heating in bedrooms. Maybe Craig?
Cool, yeah, so heating in bedrooms as a tenant, you're sort of limited to an electric plug-in heater. The tricky part is it doesn't really matter how much money you spend on an electric heater. They all have the same energy efficiency in the sense of how much energy they can convert into heat. So that just means if you have a 1 kilowatt heater, it will use 1 kilowatt of electricity per hour and output 1 kilowatt of heat per hour. If you had a 2 kilowatt heater, it would use twice the energy at 2 kilowatts and cost twice the amount to run, but it would also put out twice the amount of heat at 2 kilowatts. So they're all basically cheaper relative to themselves. Where the differences come into play are the type of heat they disperse and how accurate thermostats and stuff are as well. So there's basically 2 different types of heat. One which we're most all common with, which is what we call convectional heat, which basically is just warm air rising and cold air falling. So if you think of an oil column, you put your hand above it, nice warm air rises out the top. If you stand away from it from a meter or 2, you're not going to feel any heat until the whole room is warm. There's another type of energy called radiant heat, and radiant heat is things which will heat surfaces or objects. So most people are common with that type of energy. If you think of outdoor heating at bars and restaurants and cafes, and you sit outside at a table in freezing cold air, and you can imagine if you look up high, there's usually a heater which is glowing hot orange, hot red, it's angled 45 degrees at you, and that is radiant energy, and that basically will just heat from surface to surface. So your back would be nice and warm. If you're facing your back to it, the table would be warm, whatever's in its direct path. You can imagine if people plugged in oil columns outside, you'd be freezing cold. It would just warm the air and would be technically heating up the world. You wouldn't really feel a thing. So in bedrooms, what we normally recommend is something that has a form of radiant heat output, and that just means that it's trying to heat the surfaces in the room rather than just sending its heat to the rooftop itself. And sadly, to have a safe form of radiant heat for a bedroom, they're usually quite expensive. So they're in the premium heater range at probably around $600 odd. So for most tenants, what we'd recommend is a microthermic heater. And microthermic heaters basically have a distribution of both types of heat. So they're usually around 20% radiant and 80% convection. But they can be purchased anywhere from sort of $50 on the cheapest end of things, from Mitre 10 Mega. I've seen them at $50 for a small heater. Most of them around the $150 mark. Some of them go up to around $350. So if you're looking for a cheap, effective heater as a tenant, you don't want to spend too much money, but you want something that will also work quite well. We definitely would probably recommend a microthermic heater in most instances.
Great, thanks, Craig. Question here for the curtain bank. How many curtains can I get through the curtain bank for my house, and can I request a specific colour?
Okay, so right now we can do up to 6 pairs of curtains for a house, and I understand that a lot of people have no curtains, and so that's not enough. Our focus is on the dining and living areas. That's where most of the family is. So we'll do them, and if there's leftover, we will try and do some bedrooms, especially if there's young children or elderly. If you still have more bedrooms after that, you can apply towards the end of the year, October, November, when we're sort of through the busy season, and we're happy to try and do more curtains for you then. In terms of colour, you absolutely put down what you'd like. We cannot guarantee it at all. Because all our stock is donated, and we have to then look to see what is going to nearly fit your measurements, and then we do the tweaks it needs to fit. So we're rarely restricted. Saying that, I try my absolute hardest because, yes, we want to keep you warm, but, we want you to feel, like it's your home. So I'll always try, and even if I can't give you your color, I will always try and have something neutral or nice for the main living spaces, because that's where you and your family will probably spend the most time. So definitely put down your color choices, and yeah, I'll send you a lovely email to say I'll try. But yeah, that's it.
Great, thanks, Amanda. And just reiterating, I guess the free curtains are you need a community services card. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Interesting scientific question here. Might put Chris on the spot with this one. So the question is, I'm a renter. We have ceiling insulation and a heat pump. During winter, we often have wetness or damp on the ceiling in the lounge that appears to be where the wooden framing is in the roof. What causes that, and why is it in lines where the frame would be in the roof?
So what can happen, and to be honest, with something like that, I would really want to see the property before I said this is absolutely what the issue is. What can happen is areas that are colder will condense quicker than areas that are warmer. Now, if you've got good insulation all up in your ceiling, but it's not the type of insulation that would cover all of the joists and timber up in the ceiling, then that does allow for a quicker heat loss. It will be an area that is colder relatively than what the other parts of the ceiling lining may be, and that may be where that condensation is occurring, or why it's occurring. As I said, as a stab in the dark, that's possibly why. I would really need to see a space like that to say yes, that is the answer, or no, it's something completely different. I would like to just say that while there is common problems that we see in homes, not all homes are the same. They're all wildly different, and quite often what might be a solution for the house next door is not the solution for you.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's like when you start looking at that, exactly as Chris says, the heat loss through, if you have your blanket insulation in the ceiling which covers all the joists, then you're unlikely to see that effect on the ceiling. But if there's biscuit insulation and maybe poor biscuit insulation, that's in other words between the joists, then the only insulation when it comes to the piece of wood that's contacting the ceiling is there's that piece of wood. And so that's going to be at a colder temperature. So I've seen that in a few houses as well, and especially towards the eaves as well. So basically, water condenses on cold surfaces. So that's a classic indicator. But I guess we probably need to have a look at it, or you need to have a look at it, and then ideal solution for that would be what blanket insulation would be my guess. Another quick question for the curtain bank is basically about. Are there any types of blinds that are better than others?
We don't do blinds at all. So because right now we work off the philosophy of having it to the floor and to have that thermal layer. So I'm not sure if blinds can achieve that full thermal layer just because of the way the strips go. That's Roman blinds, so I'm not sure with that wooden ones. But yes, I can't quite answer that.
Craig?
Yep, so there are some blinds that are definitely better than others. So any form of sort of wooden slat or Venetian blinds, whether it's a wooden Venetian or plastic or whatever they're made out of, they are not very effective at all, because the whole principle of what we're trying to create is a trapped air layer or trapped air pocket. So you can get Roman or bifolding blinds, which are the ones that sort of concertina down in 3 or 4 stages, and they've got a little rope on the side you can drop. You can get them lined as well. So we have to remember there's a difference between a lining and a backing. So we don't want it to be 2 layers stuck together. We want it to be 2 separate layers with a trapped air pocket in the middle. And you can also get what they call honeycomb blinds. Some people refer to them as cellular blinds, and they basically look like a honeycomb shape or a hexagonal prism side on. They fold up to pretty much nothing, and they drop down into little hexagonal prisms. There's lots of little cellular tubes that drop down, and they create a trapped still air pocket as well. The important thing with blinds is they have to be tightly fitted. So if you're thinking of a Roman or bifolding blinds, we don't want it hanging off so far that there's a big gap on the side of the windowsill where warm air can sort of get sucked in behind. The fuse has to be tightly fitted to the frame. So the closer to the actual glass or window itself, the better for blinds. Same with curtains. In principle, we ideally want it nice and close to the frame. But yeah, the whole idea is to have a trapped air pocket or trapped air layer.
Great, thank you. Yeah, the signs of window coverings. Question here is I guess it probably comes from the Healthy Home Standards. What is a fixed permanent heat source, which is one of the requirements? We have a panel heater attached to the wall, but on a bracket. What do you think, Craig?
Cool. So a fixed heater, the type of fixed heater is determined based on the size of the room. So we have to run each individual lounge living area, or what's defined as the most commonly occupied space. If that can't be defined, it's what's the largest space by default. That's what's determined to be the main lounge living area, and we run that through a heating calculation tool that was provided by tenancy services. So that takes into account the size of your windows, the insulation value in your walls, the glazing, the ceiling, the floor, and that will give us a heat load requirement. If your heat load requirement is 2.4 kilowatts or less, you can get away with a plug-in electric heater as long as it is fixed to the wall and also has a thermostat. So if your room is quite small, that heater would probably legally pass. I'd say 95% of the rooms we see are going to have a heat load requirement over 2.4 kilowatts, which means it has to have an approved heat source that is also efficient to run. So a landlord can't technically put in 2 electric heaters because that would cost too much to run. So if you're over 2.4 kilowatts, you're usually looking at a fluid gas heater, a fireplace, a pellet burner, or a heat pump if they can be installed. There are exemptions where, think of like an apartment 8 stories high sort of thing. There's exemptions where that can't be met. So then the landlord's responsibility is to meet that standard to the best of their ability with a qualifying heater. So in that case, there will be instances where you may have a 2.4 kilowatt plug-in electric heater which is fixed to the wall, where it's actually undersized for a space, but nothing else can technically go in for health and safety reasons or install liabilities and stuff like that as well. So some body corporates may have certain cladding types which they don't want to penetrate and may have rulings around outside condensers for heat pumps and stuff like that. But in most of the properties we see, if it doesn't have heating already and it's a decent sized room, you probably, most landlords would most likely have to install a heat pump where it can be practically installed as well.
Great, thanks, Craig. So we've got another question here. It's someone who says, I own my own home. Excuse me, I'll just scroll that back up on the screen. And I want to find out what I can do to retrofit to make it more energy efficient. So including lighting. Is that something you can help with? Chris, maybe you could direct that question to you.
Yeah, what you probably want to do is get in touch with us, perhaps after this, and arrange an assessment for when we can conduct it again once we're at level 3, ideally level 2. So myself, Craig, and a few of our other colleagues, as we are home performance advisors, our job is exactly that. We'll come through, we'll discuss our recommendations with you into your home, what's going to make sense, what may not make sense, and really work through with you with a plan to achieve what you're looking for, and we're pretty well qualified to do so. So that would be my recommendation. Get in touch with us.
Great, thanks, Chris. Question here: is it okay to use my gas oven with the door open to heat my kitchen and dining space? Craig, what do you think?
So you're definitely not recommended, and that's just because with a gas oven, they're not technically fluid, so the combustion of the gas isn't extracted outside. So there's lots of nasty chemicals like carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide that come out of unfluid gas heating, which would include a gas oven as well with the door open. There's also water vapor, so usually most people say anywhere from half a litre to a litre per hour of operation is evaporated into the air. So damp air requires more energy to heat, so it's sort of counterproductive. You've sort of got a situation where you're releasing moisture into the air, which is using more energy. You do obviously have effective heat because it's obviously puts out a lot of heat, but it's not very safe at all. So we definitely advise against that. In most countries, unfluid gas heating is actually banned. New Zealand's one of the few countries that doesn't have it banned. So yeah, 100% a last resort. We'd recommend absolutely anything over that. To be fair, that's sort of the worst form of heating we'd recommend, just due to the health risks. So yeah, World Health Organization only recommended if it's in a well ventilated area. And by that, they mean sort of having a window open. So if you're happy to have a window open with the oven door open as well, so that moisture and chemicals can extract, then that's okay. But it sort of also defeats the purpose of heating as well, because all your heat's going to fly out the window. So yeah, we're very, very against that as an idea, sadly.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I think the portable gas heaters, we also certainly recommend against using those for the same reasons. And as well, the portable gas heater is also very expensive to run, a lot more expensive per unit of heat than plug-in electric. So interesting question here. Might direct this to Chris. So there's a tenant, and he's saying that she's saying there's no underfloor insulation at the flat. The landlord says that they're exempt because the space is too small. How small is too small? I can get under there to set rat traps. So yeah, what are the height limitations there?
Yeah, so this is actually a common thing that we see in our day-to-day role normally. What we would look at is what we would call a safe operational space for our team to be in. Most organizations and companies would work to a minimum height requirement of 400 mil or 40 centimeters. and that itself is not actually that high. Anything much lower than that, and it does become a little bit problematic. Now, you'll quite often see guys who might be running data cables for chorus, or potentially plumbers running pipes, etc., and they will go into smaller spaces. It's probably worthwhile noting that they're not trying to cover 100% of a floor space, and with insulation we need to cover it all, or else it kind of loses its effect. If you just go into kind of one small isolated area, you can get away with things like that. What I've always said is, you got to put yourself in a position, if you are under there, if you're working with tools as you have to with underfloor insulation, and you injure yourself or one of your colleagues is injured, how quickly can you get out of that space and safely? If the answer is not very quickly at all because it's a struggle and it's very low to the ground, then we just don't want to run that risk. But I guess to answer that question, 40 centimeters or 400 mil is about the benchmark for most organizations, and there are very, very few operators that would go below that.
And that 400 mil, Chris, is that from what, the ground to the bottom of the joist, or?
Yeah, sorry, I should clarify. That's from the dirt to the bottom of the joist.
But I guess I have seen organisations that will go lower than that. That's certainly our standard and reasonably common industry standard. So I guess the exemption, what is that? The exemption, what, as it goes in the law, is that if a insulation company reasonably thinks that that's not doable,
yes, then
that would be exempt. But if you can find an insulation company that can do 300 mils, and there may be some out there, then I would certainly say there was certainly a case for getting it done. Yeah, it's an interesting one. Every organisation is responsible for its own health and safety, for keeping their staff safe. So different folks may have different standards. So question now about cheap and easy fixes for drafts. Right, you, Craig?
Cool. So we'll start off with the cheapest side of things. So they're just things you have around the home. So if you have rolled up towels or newspaper or anything, you can put them in gaps. You just have to remember it's also very important to ventilate a property, so we don't want to shove newspaper in there and never open the window. But if you want to block drafts, you can use things around the home. Also top of curtain tracks if they stick out far from the wall, like the big sort of hoop curtains that look sort of like hoop earrings. You can roll up towels or blankets and put them at the top to stop warm air from getting sucked over top of that curtain track or curtain rail as well. So they're on the very cheap side of things that are, I guess, free. Just take up your time. In the sense of draft protection, if you are a tenant and you have the landlord's permission, we'd normally recommend a product which we call V-Seal. And the benefit, I don't know if I have some on me, the benefit of V-Seal is it's like a little, well, it's a V shape, but the nice thing is it can open and close to different size gaps. So you can have a 1 mil gap at one end and it opens out to an 8 mil gap at the other end. So the benefit, I'm not sure if you can see it that well, sorry, but the benefit of this product is that it can fill a wide range of gaps, whereas most people are used to the little rubber or foam strips, and they typically fill about a 3 to a 5 mil gap. So they're sort of limited in what they can do. And what ends up happening is if you try to put in an area which is too tight or too small a draft, and the window won't close anymore, or latches don't line up, or the door doesn't shut with its lock. So yeah, the product V-Seal, which we sell at our Eco Centre, is definitely the easiest product to use. It's just basically double-sided tape that, I'm not sure how easy it is to see from the camera, sorry, double-sided tape that peels off and it just sticks to the back of a window or door frame. So as a window or door closes, it closes up on that V, and then it opens back up to fill whatever gaps left. So it always wants to sit at that 45-degree angle, which is nice. So that's a nice simple one as well. And you can get professional draft protection done if you're a homeowner. It's quite expensive. The V-Seal is very easy. Comes with instructions. There's videos online. So yeah, usually would recommend V-Seal. It works out about $3 per meter. So, you know, an average home might need about 8 packets in total. So 8 packets at $15. What are we? How's my maths? 30, 69. You might be about $90 to do an average home with draft protection in your own time. So it's not a huge cost. And drafts, just in the sense of heat loss, is around, they say 6 to 9. I just usually say 10%, roughly 10% of your heat loss. So can make quite a big difference for a pretty small cost, which is nice. It's just if you're doing it for free and cheap, you got to remember that it's also important to ventilate for half an hour a day. So we don't want to see every single window jam-packed full of newspaper and cardboard, and see that you never ventilate. So it's also important to ventilate as well. We want that ventilation to be controlled, which means we choose when it ventilates. We don't want unnatural drafts coming in every second of the day, sort of doing that ventilation for us. It's not an ideal situation.
Great, thanks, Craig. Well, we're about on time, so maybe we can just quickly do a last roundup. Each of our panelists has a top tip for you. So maybe I could start with Amanda. What's a top tip from the Curtain Bank?
Get curtains that fit your windows properly. So we will put the links so that you can see how to properly measure windows, so that you're going to try and keep as much of the heat in the room as possible if the curtains fit your windows properly. Great, thanks, Amanda. Chris, what do you got for us?
Yeah, look, as the temperature drops, our external walls in our homes are going to be part of the weakest part of our thermal envelope. Now, what I would recommend inside, especially with bedrooms, etc., if you've got any beds and furnishings that are on external walls and hard up against external walls, try and pull them back a little bit. If those are constantly in contact with your external wall, you are going to increase the chance of getting condensation and damp issues developing in there, and that's obviously the last thing you want. So a bit of airflow in your rooms, pull your furnishings back a little wee way from the external walls, you should be good. Great, thanks Chris. And Craig?
Cool. So this is one of our favourite tips with your tenant or a homeowner, is dry your washing outdoors. So Wellington, we've got a very rainy day today. A lot of people would then dry their clothes indoors in front of heat pumps or heat sources. We just have to remember that all that water vapor is going to evaporate into the air and require more energy to heat, and then it's going to absorb into cold, damp furnishings, making them damp and moldy. So clothes are roughly 2 to 5 litres of moisture evaporated per load of washing. So either wait for a sunny day. If you have a dryer which is ducted or vented to the outside, or condensing, it's far better than drying your clothes indoors. It only costs $1 a cycle to run. So dryers get a horrendous name for being power hungry, and people blame them for sort of $50 of the power bill, but no one's really doing 50 cycles of drying a month. So yeah, $1 a cycle for dryers. If they're unvented, then it's very poor, because you're just paying to dry your clothes and you're also still pumping that moisture around the house. So ideally have a vented dryer to outside, or wait for a sunny day, or have somewhere under cover like a garage, shed or porch, but definitely don't dry your clothes indoors.
Great. Thanks, Craig. Thanks for those great tips, panelists. So yeah, big thank you to Amanda, Chris and Craig. This is the final time, the final of number 2 in our series. So thanks for coming along. We'll be posting these questions and any answers, and if you had any other questions, then send it to us, and we'll post them on Facebook and the website. And a recording of this webinar will also be available, and we'll follow up with some resources as well later today. So our next Q&A will be on waste and how to reduce waste. So please join us again this coming Wednesday, the 6th, that's tomorrow, same time, 2 p.m. for our waste reduction series, which will be on littlest lunches and food waste. So yeah, thank you very much for everyone for joining us on this rather cold Tuesday. And we'll just ask our panelists to remain on the line, and everybody else, we'll see you soon. Kia kaha.